Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Fans Talk Pro Wrestling Podcast. As always, I'm your host with the most, Freddie Carlson, and I am here today with my good friend Angelo. Say hi to the people, Angelo.
Hello, hello.
And today we have another top 10 coming your way. We will get into that in a couple of minutes, but we would be remiss if we did not briefly mention the tragic situation currently going on with the former WWE superstar Shad Gaspard. For those who might not know, Shad was at the beach on Sunday with his family, his wife and his son, and his son and himself were in the ocean swimming when a rip current came in and started to cause trouble. Lifeguards were trying to get everybody out of the water. Shad instructed the lifeguards to try and save his son first, which they did successfully. However, in the meantime, Shad was hit by another wave, and unfortunately, he has not yet been found. It's been well over 48 hours now since the incident took place. Um, we are kind of as a community waiting till we find out more. Um, I've seen so many heartfelt, touching posts and tributes to him on social media the past 2 days. Um, and from a personal perspective, my heart and my prayers and my concern is with Shad and his family, and it's praying for some sort of miracle that he might come out of this okay. It's very hard to believe that anything positive can come, but we have to pray, we have to hope, and it's just a tragic and unfortunate situation from someone who's so well loved by everybody who knows him. Um, so we'll keep Shad in our minds as we go through this episode. But as I'm sure he would want us to do, he would want life to go on, and we will do so. And so today's top 10, getting back to our topic for this episode, is another top 10 that Angelo and I have compiled lists for. And this one is our top 10 mid-card superstars in WWE history. Now, a few little regulations and rules for our discussion on who is eligible to be considered the greatest mid-card superstar of all time. Um, Number one, they cannot have held a world championship in WWE. We have selected three titles that signify world championships. Obviously, the WWE Championship, the Big Gold Belt World Heavyweight Championship, and which was active from 2002 to 2013, and the Universal Championship, which has been active since 2016. If they have held any one of those three championships, that does not make them eligible. Secondly, they cannot have main evented WrestleMania. So if anyone has competed in a WrestleMania main event, the final match of the night, that eliminates them from contention. So first name on that comes to mind with that particular rule is Bam Bam Bigelow, who main evented WrestleMania 11. He would have been on my list had that not been one of the regulations we had agreed upon. And lastly, world championships and other companies, whether it be TNA, NWA, WCW, ECW, and the WWE ECW Championship, are all not considered world championships for our restrictions. And so that was how we've narrowed it down, and we will now begin to go through our lists. Angelo, what was some of your thought process for your top 10?
So for my top 10, it was mainly who I feel like I guess paved the way for mid card stars. People that just either weren't given an opportunity or they were and they just didn't live up to it. And they still were able to put on like great performances. So that's kind of the way that I based off my list.
Yeah, for me, it was a combination of things, a lot of what you said, but also just guys who achieved a certain level of mid card or tag team success, but never quite broke through that glass ceiling. Uh,
Right.
there's the old adage about grabbing the brass rings, and we've heard Vince McMahon on Stone Cold's podcast even say how, kind of allude to the fact that it may not even be totally real in many respects. And, whether that be that as it may, for me, it's a lot of who succeeded at one level, but either was not he was not given that opportunity, wasn't given enough time, or was put there and failed to succeed at that level. A lot of my list will include guys who I believe should have been world champion at one time or another, and I'll get into that a little bit as we go on. But yeah, so those are our regulations and restrictions, and our little bit of backstory onto why or how we went about picking our list. And so, as always, we have some honorable mentions. Angelo and I have both picked 3 men who just missed our top 10 for these lists, and we will go through them each. First my 3, then his 3, and then we will get right into our top 10. So for my 3 honorable mentions, in no particular order, are Rusev, Cody Rhodes, and R-Truth. Just a little bit about each of them. Cody Rhodes, who had so much potential in WWE, but for whatever reason never ascended to that main event level, and after a certain point only seemed to be regressing from when he was almost Mr. Money in the Bank and feuding with the Authority to regulating him down to being Stardust about a year later. In his career, Cody Rhodes is a 6-time WWE Tag Team Champion, a 2-time WWE Intercontinental Champion, and across the world in different wrestling promotions, especially since his departure from WWE, he has been a IWGP United States Heavyweight Champion, the ROH World Champion, ROH 6-Man Tag Team Champion, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, the WCPW Internet Champion, and he is currently in the finals of the TNT Championship Tournament in AEW, which a company he is currently the Executive Vice President for. Our list being conducted of WWE status, have made him a honorable mention for this list in my eyes, and I do definitely believe that he'll reach the megastar status his father reached in AEW. Rusev, not as many career accolades, really starting his professional wrestling career in the major sense of the world as a 3-time United States champion with WWE, had as many ups and downs. I do believe that around the time of 2015, shortly after his feud with John Cena, he should have entered into the World Championship scene. However, that didn't happen, and slowly but surely he unfortunately found his way moving down the card. And any attempt to resurrect his career like the Rusev Day character just never hit the way that it should have. And I believe that he had so much more potential as a mega heel or even as a babyface, and it did not hit. And lastly, R-Truth. I gotta be honest, and Angelo, you know how much I love R-Truth. This man makes me laugh on a week-to-week basis. I mean, we forget how talented he is in that ring for a guy who's his age, but, I mean, just the 24/7 championship stuff alone has made him the greatest thing I see on Raw most weeks. His promos have me dying. I mean, he calls it the 24/7, 48/7, 7-Eleven, I-95 South, something else, European Television Championship. I mean, that's funny as hell to me. It's great. But beyond that, I mean, some of his other career accolades, he's a 2-time WWE United States Champion. He's a 35-time 24/7 champion. That's a fact that I Googled, and it is correct. He won the 2nd season of the WWE Mixed Match Challenge. He won the 2009 Bragging Rights Trophy. He's a 2-time NWA World Champion, a 2-time TNA, 1-time TNA World Tag Team Champion, 2-time NWA Tag Champion. And he's been around for a long time. He started wrestling in the WWE in '99, so he's been around the block. And he never really got to that world title scene, but, one thing leads to another, and one thing led to another in his career, which led him to being this comedian gimmick, which, for all intents and purposes, has been the best thing about his career, and I think he enjoys it. I know I enjoy it, and many, many fans enjoy it. He makes me laugh hysterically almost every time I see him, so, I mean, if he was younger, I could still see him having a world title reign in his future, but I just don't, and I just wanted to include him because of how much I love R-Truth, so those are my 3 honorable mentions. And now, Angelo, who are your 3 honorable mentions?
The 3 guys that unfortunately didn't make my top 10, but I felt like they deserved a place in my list, are, in no particular order, Carlito, Spike Dudley, and X-Pac.
Oh, man, those are some good ones. I love that X-Pac pick. He actually didn't make my top 10, but, yeah. All right, so what do you got to say about these 3 very talented mid-carders?
So, one reason why I'm just gonna go in like in order on why. So for me, Carlito, it was when John Cena was the United States champion. Was the United States champion back in what was it, '04 when Carlito made his debut, and he came out and like
Yes.
accepted a challenge basically.
Yeah, Carlito came up on SmackDown in 2004, shortly after Cena's stuff with the Big Show.
Yes, and he was the one to step up and basically slap Cena in the face, and I think he rolled away with the victory and the championship. So for
Yeah,
him to do that on his, I think,
huge,
debut.
a huge shock debut, and I think the fans couldn't believe it. I know I wasn't watching at the time, but it was crazy.
Yeah. No, I remember like seeing him, and then like afterwards coming out, biting the apple and spitting in people's faces.
That
With
gimmick
it was
was
just
really cool.
true heel.
True heel, but somehow also got over as a babyface, which I don't quite understand.
Oh yeah, no, it was definitely definitely a weird time.
Yes.
So yeah, just because of that. But some background on him: he's a WWE United States champion. He held that title once. The Intercontinental title he held once. The WWE Tag Team title he held once, and the World Tag Team title he held one time.
Yes, those were with his brother Primo, correct?
Yeah, brother or cousin, one of those. I don't remember.
They're brothers, and then
They're brothers.
Epico's the cousin, I believe.
Yes. So yeah, that's as much as I have to say for Carlito. For Spike Dudley, I don't want to say it's just because he was part of Team 3D, but also all the extreme moments that he had. Getting thrown through so many tables
Man took a
and
beating.
pushed off so many ladders, and whatever chair shots he's taken, and even teaming with the Big Show.
Yeah, that man took
I
a
almost
beating.
forgot about that until I just had to like reread on him a little bit because I was like, oh, didn't he team with the Big Show? And then I was like, yeah, let me see. And I remember him and the Big Show had a short-lived tag team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to think back to stuff like that and like those forgotten about little teams and segments and moments that really made you laugh in the moment, but then you look back on 15, 20 years later and you're like, wait, what? That happened? We were just talking about it yesterday, not to get off topic. We were talking about a singles run that Jimmy Uso had back in 2015, and I'm just like, I don't remember it, but you do a Google search and you find out that he did have a very short-lived singles run while Jay was on the injured shelf, so case in point right there. But I love Spike. I love Spike, man. He's another guy that you gotta just love because like the early version of James Ellsworth,
Oh yeah.
him and Gilbert led to what James Ellsworth would become in many ways.
Yeah. So I feel like just out of that respect, he had to make my honorable mentions.
Oh, for sure.
And last but not least, X-Pac.
Yeah, the 1, 2, 3 kid.
I have him on there because not only was he part of DX and NWO, but I mean his list of accomplishments too. I didn't realize it was this long. He held the WCW Cruiserweight Championship once, the WCW World Tag Team Championship once, the WWF European Championship twice, the WWF Light Heavyweight Championship twice, the WWF Tag Team Championship 4 times, and now, I mean, hopefully when the Hall of Fame ceremony happens, he'll be a 2-time Hall of Famer.
Yes, that's right, because he went in with DX, and now he's going in with the NWO for the 2020 class.
Yep, back-to-back years, too. Who would have thought?
Yeah, I don't think that's ever... I know there's a very short list of 2-time Hall of Famers, but I don't think there's ever been someone to go in back-to-back years. Shawn Michaels was 2011 and 2019. Bret Hart was 2006 and 2019.
Yep.
Booker T 2013, 2019. Ric Flair 2008 and 2012. And Hulk Hogan 2005 and 2020. So yeah, X-Pac going in back-to-back years. And I also, you gotta remember with him, the 1, 2, 3 kid, his very, very early beginning, when he beat Razor Ramon on Monday Night Raw, they still play that highlight. They still play that highlight. It's crazy. He comes out, and even though he's X-Pac, and everybody knows he's X-Pac, that's what he became most famous for, they still chant 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, especially when he's in New York, because that's where it happened. But I love your honorable mentions list. I just gotta say, we compiled so many potential names that I really love how this list can go. And I'm very excited to get into our top 10s and see where they go from here. And so that's what we're
Yes.
going to do. We're going to break right into the top 10. And for me, number 10 is a man who I still really, really believe he has a WWE Championship run or a Universal title run in his near, and I'm saying this with all hope and prayer that it actually happens, very near future. And that's the artist known as Shinsuke Nakamura. Shinsuke Nakamura is a 3-time IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, a 5-time IWGP Intercontinental Champion. He's a 1-time IWGP Heavyweight Tag Champion. He was the winner of the 2014 G1 Climax Tournament, the 2006 G1 Tag League, the 2014 New Japan Cup. He's a 2-time NXT champion, a 2-time United States champion. He's held the WWE Intercontinental Championship once, and he was the winner of the 2018 Men's Royal Rumble match. He has had a very successful career over the last near 2 decades in the wrestling industry. I mean, everybody knew him in New Japan as this guy who took the world by storm with his really weird rock star Michael Jackson type gimmick, and was also one of the most technically proficient wrestlers in the ring. And even before he came to WWE, he was very world renowned in terms of his capability. Then he comes to WWE, and his first match is this absolute banger that everybody to this day remembers against Sami Zayn. And from then on, he had a huge NXT run that may have fizzled out a little too quickly, I'm not going to lie, but you wanted to get him to the main roster and capitalize on his popularity. And the teasing they did with him and Styles. And yeah, you hurt his stock a little bit having him lose to Mahal twice. But you really, truly had a chance to do something really good with Nakamura in early 2018. He won the Royal Rumble. He had a chance to beat AJ at Mania. And he didn't even have to beat AJ at Mania. The heel turn was fine. But he had 3 consecutive matches with AJ after that. At Money in the Bank, at Greatest Royal Rumble, at Backlash, and at Money in the Bank. And not once was he able to win the championship from AJ. That's what hurt him for me, and that's when he started sliding down the card, and he had 2. I mean, his Intercontinental Championship run was 7 months long. And I don't remember any defense outside of when he won the title lost the title to Braun Strowman, and when he won it from Finn Balor. And I really hate the fact that they took a guy who was so popular, made him this heel, and just kind of let it fizzle out. Even his new heel theme song is really good, and I still want to believe that whether it's as a heel or a babyface, he can truly be a world champion in the next year or 2. And so for me, Nakamura is at number 10, but I would be much happier to remove him from this list because he gets the opportunity to either headline a WrestleMania or win the World Championship. I think both of those things could be in his future if they just put a little bit more stock into him, especially after the fans are allowed back in, because the crowd still loves his entrance, and he's still over in that sense. But he's number 10 on my list, Shinsuke Nakamura.
Wow. I definitely agree with everything that you just said. Number 10 for me is Mr. Kennedy.
Oh, Kennedy!
He's a 1-time WWE United States champion, and he won the Money in the Bank contract back in 2007, and then a short time after, he lost it to Edge.
On my birthday, yeah.
And then, I guess, fast forward a little bit, he just started going downhill with his career, and I feel like he wasn't given enough opportunities, which then made him jump ship to go to TNA. And boom, Mr. Anderson is born, and he wins the TNA World Championship for, 2 times, 3 times? I'm not exactly sure.
I believe there was 2 reigns, and it was involved in that whole Immortal mess that was going on at the time. TNA just basically turned into a 2011 version of WCW for a little while, where everybody was kind of mixed in. Nobody knew who was doing what or what was going on, and then the infamous stuff with Jeff Hardy and showing up to Victory Road completely, high off his rocker. And Anderson, he had another good run up with the Aces and Eights, but never reached levels that he should have, I think.
No, definitely. And then he unfortunately went, I believe, back to the independent scene for a couple of years, and then he just slowly I don't want to say died off, but he just like fell flat.
Yeah, I know he's been working for the NWA right now, and they've got
Right.
their own broadcast that they've been doing on Tuesday nights. And I just think that Anderson really had so much potential. He was such a good heel in
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
2006. His feud with the Undertaker was fantastic, you
Oh
know.
yeah.
And even though he lost the blow off match, he didn't lose any stock because of that. He looked so strong the entire feud. And then he moves into a feud with Batista for the world title. And look, we all knew that he wasn't going to go into that WrestleMania to face the Undertaker, who won the Rumble. But that Money in the Bank run, he should have had a huge cash in on whether it was Cena or Taker. He should have had that opportunity. I mean, cashing in on Taker after having such a great feud with him to really make him a star would have been the perfect thing. But things happened as they did. I know injuries and backstage politics definitely did not help him over the course of his career, especially in WWE. But you know,
No, especially and then in TNA when he had the Enigma Championship, he was calling on Triple H a little bit.
yeah, that one promo was pretty good. I do remember that promo.
Yeah.
That championship belt was weird. I didn't like the design, and I was very glad when they got rid of it. But nonetheless, yeah, I think Ken is a great pick for that, and he's not on my list. But once again, we've always said when we do these videos that the diversity in our lists is always the best part of doing them. So moving ahead to number 9 now, and for me, it's a man who's had 2 real stints in his career, and it's Fit Finlay, the Irishman who loves to fight. Although I'm pretty sure WWE says that about just about every Irish superstar at one point or another in their WWE runs. I remember every single Finlay match, especially if you go back and watch some of them on the network. He comes. I mean, his theme song literally used to be, "My name is Finlay, and I love to fight." I mean, anyway, a man who had a well over 30-year career that started back in the 80s, the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, and then he retired in the 90s. He was working as a producer, and then all of a sudden he's back in the ring for a couple of years. His resume includes a WCW Television Championship, a WWE United States Championship, and he was one of the winners of the 2009 Bragging Rights Trophy alongside the rest of Team Friday Night SmackDown at the first Bragging Rights pay-per-view. And for me, Finlay is a guy you had to love him, especially at the tail end of his career because he was just a fun guy. He was still good in the ring. I mean, he holds a lot of respect from all the guys and girls in the locker room as a producer nowadays, and I just loved Finlay's character in his at least in his WWE run. And I'm not saying he should have been world champion. At the time he was around, he was definitely kind of not the biggest name when you had guys like Batista and Edge and Undertaker on SmackDown and Cena and Orton and Triple H on Raw. So he was never going to break into that scene, but I have a soft spot for Finlay, and so that's why I included him on my list at number 9.
Wow. That's definitely a good place for Finlay. I mean, I love him too. You know, great guy. Definitely fighting Irishman. Number 9 for me is Shelton Benjamin, someone who recently made his return.
Yeah, I think this return was ill-fated, but yes indeed.
Definitely. So his list of accomplishments, very few, but can't forget to mention them. WWE Intercontinental Champion 3 times. He held the WWE Tag Team Championship twice and the WWE United States Championship once. And then outside of WWE, he worked in Ring of Honor with Charlie Haas again as what was it, the America's Greatest Tag Team again, I think, or World's Greatest Tag Team.
Yeah.
I think they had to use a different name, but they held the Ring of Honor Tag Team Championships a couple times. The reason why I put him on was because of his memorable matches back in the day, and especially that ladder dive at WrestleMania. Oh my God!
Yeah, that
off the top, just on top of everybody.
They still show it.
That was insane.
Yeah. He made his name in those Money in the Bank matches. That was his coup d'etat, I think is what it's called. Like his highest moment. You know.
Yeah.
In the T-bone suplex off the ladder against Edge, and then and in the first Money in the Bank, He ran up the ladder with a clothesline against Jericho in that same match. Then that big dive at Mania 22, where he ran up the ladder and then jumped off. And then Mania 25, he was on the ladder on the ramp and damn near killed himself when he jumped off because he didn't get all the way over until right at the end. I thought he was going to land right on his head. Yeah, Shelton's great. I love Shelton. Definitely wish his latest run resulted in something.
Yes.
Really.
No, that's exactly why I put him as low as I did. But I felt like he needed to be on the list somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't include Shelton, but I think that he was a guy who in the mid 2000s could have very well been a world champion. He was one of the guys who kind of got a little bit hurt by the reign of terror of Triple H, among other things that happened in the time. I believe that he had a lot of potential. He maybe should have won one or two of those Money in the Bank matches. I mean, you kind of can't rewrite history, at least when you're talking about this. We're not doing fantasy booking right now, how we would have booked something or how we would in the future. But I definitely think that Shelton's a guy who was not utilized properly at his peak. So moving ahead now to number 8 on our respective lists. And for me, it's a man who was recently released by WWE, the Long Island Iced Z, Zack Ryder. Man formerly known as Zack Ryder, now known as Matt Cardona, his real name. In WWE, he was a one-time Intercontinental Champion, a one-time United States Champion, and a two-time WWE Tag Team Champion, which reigns took place almost 11 years apart, both with the same man, Kurt Hawkins, in 2008 and then again in 2019. We were there
Yes.
the night of their second win, the Raw Tag Titles against the Revival on the Mania 35 kickoff show. And I'll be honest, the crowd was a lot hotter than I thought it would be for a pre-show tag team match.
Oh, yes. Very hot. Piping hot.
They came out there, and those two New York boys won the tag team titles, and that crowd popped. It was also the big payoff to Hawkins' losing streak. And I think Ryder was so over, and I just don't think that WWE was happy that he got over on his own. You know, he got over using YouTube and social media, the Internet Championship and all that stuff back in 2011, and it made him a star, and they used him, and then they buried him, and then he wasn't around, and then all of a sudden he's back, and then he wins the Intercontinental title after having not been used frequently in probably four years, and then he goes back down, and then he comes back up one more time in the tag title, right? You know, the up and down was very well known. I'm a big Zack Ryder guy, and as much as I would love for him to have had a world title run in WWE, I think he can do so much more on the indies now, and I think that if he really, he's going to be working singles. He posted on social media or had an interview somewhere, I forget exactly where, that he said him and Kurt, or Brian Myers, are going to go their separate ways. We all know Brian is going to have a very good. He had one successful indie run earlier in his career, while Zack lingered in the mid-card of WWE and mid-card hell for years. And I think this is a good opportunity for Zack. And when the world opens back up, I do really want to see where he goes, what he does. He's got a lot to offer the business. He can go a lot of places. I think he can do really well, especially in America, because he's so popular and and he's so over with people who are just everyday guys who love wrestling. So I think Zack's still got a long career ahead of him on the indies, and I'm very intrigued to see what happens.
Wow. Definitely agree with everything that you just said about him. Unfortunately, he's not on my list, but nonetheless, definitely deserving of a spot. Number 8 for me is a former 2-time Intercontinental Champion, Umaga.
Ah, yes, I've got the big Samoan on my list, a little higher up.
Main reason why I put him on was because you would think like such a big guy like him, he made his debut. He looked like a freaking dominant force, and he had a dominant run for a little bit, and then unfortunately he fell short. I feel like it was bad booking that made him just get buried all the time. He lost matches to someone like Jeff Hardy and John Cena. Like I feel like way too often.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't think it was wrong for him to lose. So his initial feud as Umaga, after being repackaged from 3 Minute Warning, which was a godsend. I have to say that, was was to feud with John Cena over the WWE Championship. And I remember their last man standing match from the 2007 Royal Rumble. It's a sleeper good match. If you have time or you're looking for a match in quarantine, watch Umaga versus John Cena at the 2007 Royal Rumble. Even if you've seen it before, but it's been years since I watched it, and I still remember it fondly. I liked it. I was okay with him not going over because he was still fresh, he was still new, and I still felt like there was a high ceiling for him. And like I said, I have Umaga on my list. I have him at number 6, so when we get to my number 6, we can kind of just move through it a little faster, and I'll just say what I have to say now. I think it was better for him just to then really get his first taste of championship gold in the Intercontinental title scene. It was the better place for him to really get used to being in the ring and get this character over, and he was. And then, of course, he got regulated to being Vince McMahon's personal heavy, and that was what started the downtrod for me. You know, he got beaten by Santino Marella in Italy. Never gonna forget that one. While it was a great moment for Santino, not so great for Umaga. Also, I don't think either of us included Santino, at least I didn't. Santino Marella just needs, if he ever had a chance to come back, he only needs a world title to be a Grand Slam champion. How that is even a reality is crazy. Santino is a 2-time Intercontinental champion, a 1-time tag champion, and a 1-time U.S. champion. I just doing that, remembering in my head, his tag title reign was with Vladimir Kozlov. And I remember they had a tea party in London with Sheamus as their special guest, and then Santino spilled the tea in Sheamus' lap. But nonetheless, getting back to Umaga, yeah, like you said, the bad booking with Vince was what really pulled him down for me. I think that there was still hope for him in 2008, but I believe he got injured shortly after WrestleMania 24. I know he had the fantastic Falls Count Anywhere match with Jeff Hardy at One Night Stand Extreme Rules 2008, another sleeper match. Umaga had some great matches. Thinking back, it was never 5-star, but he had some good matches with Cena, with Hardy, with Triple H. You know, some good times with Umaga over the years. But yeah, I just think that injuries got in the way, and then he had his return. He feuded with CM Punk for a bit. It was a little weird and awkward. Had a strap match. Then he got released, worked a few indie shows, and then unfortunately he passed away. I think it's been a decade already since Umaga passed away, and to me that's a crazy fact, but you know, the unfortunate reality of the situation. But I love Umaga, and all the points you made about him having been booked badly, but still should have been used better, I think is very, very true. So we're moving on to number 7 now, and for me, another man who I still think has a world title reign left in his upcoming future, and that's John Morrison. John Morrison's my number 7. Among Morrison's career highlights from all over the world, as John Morrison, Johnny Nitro, Johnny Impact, Johnny Mundo, Johnny 5-Star, whatever you want to start calling him. He's a former ECW champion, a 6-time WWE Tag Team champion, a 3-time Intercontinental champion. He was the winner of Tough Enough 3. He's the second ever Lucha Underground Triple Crown champion. He's a former TNA World Champion, a AAA Mega Champion, and the 2016 Lucha Libre World Cup winner alongside Brian Cage and Chavo Guerrero Jr. Morrison had a lot of success on the indies between his WWE departure in 2012 and subsequent return late last year in 2019. I still think Jomo's got some time left at the top. I do think that if he were to break off as a single star, whether it be as a heel, which I think might be more beneficial at this stage of his career, or as a babyface, I think that he could still find himself in a higher profile world title scene against a guy like maybe Jeff Hardy, should Jeff end up getting another run as the champ. Morrison, for all the things he's done, has never held a major world championship in WWE, and I think that was a missed opportunity in many ways, especially back in 2010-11. His popularity was at the very highest point, and he may have had a better it may have been more beneficial to have him have it then as opposed to now, but I definitely love John Morrison, a guy who's had a successful career regardless of that fact, and I still think there's plenty of time left for him to do so. So he's my number 7.
Ah, that's interesting because he's my number 5.
Ha! Alright, so a little bit of
um,
continuity.
yeah, so definitely agreeing with all the points that you said, especially that 2010 2011 run that he had. I mean, the one of the main reasons why I put him on this list was when he was in that triple threat steel cage match against Cena and
Yes.
The Miz for the
Yep.
championship.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
And
that's basically why he's on my list.
yeah, another one
For
for
one
me.
of the reasons.
Yeah, another one for me before you move on was the 2010 SmackDown Elimination Chamber. He got into the final 3 with John Morrison, or with Chris Jericho, and The Undertaker.
Yes,
People forget about
I
that.
almost forgot about that.
That
Yes.
that
Oh
match
my
gets
god.
overshadowed by the Michael stuff kicking Taker, but the last guy eliminated before that was John Morrison. So, go figure.
Yep. Number 7 for me is someone that you spoke about in the honorable mentions. I believe is Cody Rhodes.
Oh yeah, big time.
Yep. Definitely all the same points that you have. I feel like before he was downgraded to Stardust, I feel like he could have held the championship.
Oh
Whether
yeah.
whether it be the big gold belt or the newer, the WWE championship that they had at that time. I just feel like even if it was for 1 second that he would have held it,
Mm-hmm.
that would have been perfect for him. I mean, even what was it? He was supposed to win the Money in the Bank. He was promised what 2 years in a row
2012 and 13, he was
and
told
13.
going in. Yeah.
Those could have worked wonders for him. I feel like if he had won that and even off of one of those successfully cashed in, and he would have been on top of the mountain. Maybe he would still be in WWE today.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. I think that if we're really thinking about it, he should have won the 2013 one because Damian Sandow won that one, and then had a failed cash in against John Cena after a mediocre run with the briefcase. I mean,
Yes.
not saying that every guy who holds the briefcase for an extended period of time has the most successful run of their careers. Sometimes it's often forgotten that they didn't probably do anything of substance. But I do think that if you put the title on Cody then, you would have been capitalizing on the hottest he was. However, then we wouldn't have gotten the really entertaining Rhodes family versus Authority storyline of late 2013. So,
True.
you could go about it 100 different ways. I love Cody, and as I said before when I mentioned him, a guy who should have won the world title up until about the Stardust character was born. Um, and yeah, good pick for you for number 7. So moving along to my number 6, as I said before, number 6 for me was Umaga. I kind of said my piece with Umaga before on how I stand with him and why I think he's very deserving. He's my number 6, and we'll move right along to Angelo's number 6 now. Who do you got?
Number 6 for me is a former, and I didn't even know that he held this title many times. 5-time Intercontinental Champion and NXT Season 1 winner Wade Barrett.
He's my
Former
number 5.
leader of the Nexus.
He's my number 5. Yep.
Again, I feel like it's a similar thing to Cody, where had he won the Money in the Bank, he probably could have had a successful cash in. But unfortunately, I feel like giving it to Sandow and not Barrett or Cody, that kind of just blew his chances. And then he had the Bad News Barrett gimmick for that while. That was pretty entertaining. But he was I feel like just caught up in the mix. And it was like, oh, here's Wade Barrett. Oh, that's great, but what's he gonna do?
Yeah, I think if 2010, 11, 12 Wade Barrett wasn't world champion as a heel, then
Yes.
2014, 15 Wade Barrett as Bad News Barrett should have won the title as a babyface. But timing being as bad as it was, and I as I said, for me, Wade Barrett's actually my number 5. I was going to get into him a little sooner, in a little bit. I think that he had one last chance to really reach a level of success when he was King Barrett. He won the 2015 King of the Ring,
Right.
and again, just kind of fell short. I mean, Yeah, he didn't have the he did it wasn't the most over gimmick he ever had. I mean, he was a hated heel when he first came up from NXT. He was over, but used as a heel when he was Bad News Barrett, and then what do you know? Kind of ends up fizzling out and getting his release. I think he should have been world champion in 2011. That's just me.
You know, with that whole feud with Randy Orton and Cena. I mean, and going back to his later years in 2014, 2015, I mean, he could have been world champion as part of the League of Nations. That would have been
Oh
perfect heel
man,
generation for me.
man, the League of Nations. I can say a lot of things about the League of Nations, and I'm gonna spare them because I don't really like. It was a gimmick that should never have happened. It was put together because they were trying to get Roman over, and if you were gonna do it, they didn't do it right, in my opinion. Um, I just think that, and also Barrett's career has been plagued by injuries. He had how many times he got taken out with an arm injury for 4, 5, 6 months. Right
That's
around
true, yeah.
every time he would win, it felt like a cycle. He'd be Intercontinental Champion, then he'd get his arm hurt, he'd be out a few months. Win the Intercontinental title, out a few months, and then right around the time of the League of Nations stuff, he had just won the King of the Ring, and then he was then he got hurt. He had the neck thing, which he couldn't compete for a long time, and then all of a sudden he gets kicked out by the League of Nations. Del Rio leaves the company, and the group split up, and Sheamus and Rusev kind of went on to their own things. And it was just it was ill-fated timing and a little bit of bad booking with his injuries, and then with the booking that he was given. I think that there was some problem there, you know.
No,
But
definitely.
yeah, and as I said, Barrett was my number 5, and I believe you said John Morrison was your number 5, correct?
Yes.
So we've
So
actually kind of sped that part up a little bit. Is there anything else you want to add about Barrett or Morrison that I didn't say before regarding John Morrison?
no, I think we actually covered everything about both of
Alrighty,
them.
sweet. So then we'll move right ahead to number 4, and for me, number 4 is a man who should have been world champion in WWE as a man who was considered woken. But I do very well think that he can do so in AEW at some point before his career comes to an end, and that is the overwhelmingly entertaining Matt Hardy. Matt has had so many different runs in his career. Of course, the initial run with Team Extreme, then the version 1 heel run, then the babyface run where he was just getting revenge on Edge, lost in the shuffle mid-card run with MVP, and then the ECW title for a little bit. Then the heel turn that didn't last long and kind of fell flat against his brother. Then leaving WWE, going to TNA, eventually becoming broken, then coming to WWE, all the stuff, coming back to WWE, having that amazing return, then eventually becoming woken, and then leaving WWE, and now he's Damascus, and he's in AEW, and he's broken, woken. I mean, he's everything now. But listen to some of his career highlights. He's won championships all over the world. He's a former ECW champion and United States champion, as I've already said. He's a 10-time WWE Tag Team champion, most of his reigns coming with his brother Jeff, also
Yes.
having won with MVP, oft forgotten about tag team title run with MVP. He's also been the WCW Tag Champion, TNA, and Ring of Honor Tag Champion. He was the 2009 Bragging Rights winner alongside the rest of Team SmackDown. He won the 2018 Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal. Also, shout out to Andre on this day of recording is Andre's birthday. He's also been a hardcore champion, European champion, and a cruiserweight champion, and a 2-time TNA World Heavyweight Champion as the iconic Matt Hardy.
Yes.
And like I said, I think as his woken gimmick in WWE, if they had booked it properly, he should have been more over and been a world championship type competitor. So be it that they ended up dropping the ball. WWE is very well known for doing that. But I still think he can have a world title run in AEW. Right now, Moxley's running hot with it, and Hardy's working the stuff with the Elite and the Inner Circle, and I think it's all fine and dandy right now. But we'll see what happens. I don't know if Matt needs it. I think it would be a good thing for the company if a guy that popular had it. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. And I just think that Matt is a guy who never reached the top level of WWE like he could have with his various gimmicks over the years.
Oh, definitely without a doubt. And Freddie, we wound up doing it again. I believe this is the third time in a row that we've done it. Matt Hardy is my number 4.
Hey, see, the middle of this list has gotten a little bit more concise because I think we have a similar. You and I have a similar standing on a lot of the names that we were discussing for our lists.
No, exactly. And I mean, you pretty much just said everything that I could have said. I mean, I probably couldn't have said it better. But yeah, I totally agree 100%. WWE and Vince dropped the ball, especially with the Woken gimmick. How do you drop the ball on that? Like, that's like a no-brainer. It's his gimmick.
Yeah, they don't like. If from what I get with Vince, I don't think he likes when people get over. We said it with Zack Ryder. They get over with things that they didn't create, and it makes him upset. And so they do whatever they can to either bury it or not feature it as prominently as they need to, or just wait till it dies off or something. It's just the way that Vince is when it comes to creative. I think if he just let Matt run with it, it could have been a lot more. But
oh yeah, he probably could have held the world championship once, or even the universal or whatever. But yeah, I mean you went through everything there is to say about Matt Hardy, and hopefully we do get to see something come out of it in his AEW run.
Yeah, I think his career is numbered because of the injuries and the amount of time he's had in the ring. But here's to hoping that it ends up working out for him in the long run. So moving on to number 3. This is a guy who a lot of people love, who thought he should have been world champion multiple times over, and I couldn't agree more. And it's William Regal. He's a man, a real man's man. Oh man, when he was that theme song still hits to this day. Steven Regal back in the late 90s. But Regal, he's a 4-time WWE Tag Team Champion, a 4-time European Champion, 2-time Intercontinental Champion, a 4-time WCW Television Champion, and the winner of the 2008 King of the Ring. And he's also basically the grandfather, father, and uncle of NXT these days, pulling all the duty as being the on-screen general manager. And I love Regal. I mean, everybody knows how talented he was in the ring, being such a tough man from England, and again, a stereotype, but this time legit and something that we can get behind because he'll kick your ass if you get in his way. And I think that was what was most important about Regal, was that he never took any BS from anybody. He always was able to either make you laugh. That's the thing. Regal can make you laugh. I mean, he had some funny stuff over the years, but he's also great at being a heel, a serious guy. He's great at being a general manager. And as I said, nothing will ever top. One of my top 5 theme songs of all time is the Steve Regal "He's a Man" theme song from back in the 90s.
Wow. Yeah, he's at my top 10 and number 2, but I feel like I put him on there pretty much all the same reasons that you have, but nonetheless, number 3 for me is someone who I don't know if you'd. I mean, you probably would agree on this with me. Is the Swiss Cyborg Cesaro.
Oh, okay. I have a lot to say about him coming up in a little bit, so I'm going to let you take the reins on this one, and I'll get into my stuff on him when I get there.
Okay, so Cesaro, former WWE United States Champion, former 5-time WWE Raw Tag Team Champion, 1-time WWE SmackDown Tag Team Champion, and the 2014 and inaugural Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal winner.
Yep. Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean, he's had success. He's just not reached that ultimate level just yet.
Not at all. I mean, all the stuff that, him and Sheamus, I feel like that tag team basically revived his career just a little bit, just enough to, I guess, get him where he needs to be, like to guide him towards the right path. I mean, he was a perfect mid-card star. Like when he was Antonio Cesaro, I feel like being that heel that he was, that was a decent time in his career. And then he slowly faded away a little bit, and then he came back, and then he faded away for a little while again, and then he came back, and was thrown together with Sheamus after their 7-match series that they had, and they became tag team champions. And now he's part of the Artist Collective with Shinsuke and Zayn. Unfortunately, they're not doing
He
anything
should
as
be
of
in the
now.
Intercontinental Championship tournament, might I add. That they're having on SmackDown right now. He's not in the tournament, but he should be.
Oh, he should be, yes, without a doubt.
But I have Cesaro on my list just a little higher. I mean, we're getting to the very tippy top, so obviously we're kind of running out of space here. But he is in my top 10, and I'll get into him in a little bit. And so number 2, you said is William Regal for you.
Yes.
For me, it is Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. Mr. Perfect was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2007, a few years after his passing. Unfortunate circumstances surrounding that. He was a 2-time Intercontinental Champion in WWE, and in a short WCW run, he held the U.S. Championship and the tag titles there 1 time apiece. Mr. Perfect, I do believe, was a victim of the early 90s dominance of Hogan and Savage and Warrior, and most specifically Hogan, that prevented him from ever excelling to those other levels of stardom. He had back injuries that also took him out at many different points in his career and cost him a lot of time in the ring. But at the end of the day, when it comes to Mr. Perfect, his gimmick was one of the best of the time, and it made being a heel look so easy. He just made you hate him because he made you feel like you were so much less and he was so much better than you. And nowadays that's a typical heel gimmick. Their goal is to make you hate them because they think they're better than you, or at least the most heels. I mean, some gimmicks are obviously supersede that, like Seth Rollins' Messiah gimmick and things of that sort. But and even that has a basis in, hey, I'm the Messiah, so I'm better than you, type of thing. And I just think that Mr. Perfect, he should have had more. And again, a victim of injury, booking issues, but also the time. Just not being the right time for him with a guy like Hogan running around at the top of the card.
Yes, and he is on the very top of my list. He is my number 1 pick. Yeah. I feel like he definitely paved the way for any mid-card stars who are looked down on, and they're just trying to find their way in the shuffle. And I mean, who could forget all of his great promos? I mean, he like you said, he made it look so easy, but that was just him. That's what he brought to the table.
Oh yeah.
And I definitely, like you said, I'm better than you, whatever. I could see MJF thinking of, like, not thinking of, but he's trying to be like Mr. Perfect in AEW. Maybe just a little more heel, but like he has that thing about him where I'm better than you and you know it. That whole asshole gimmick.
Yeah. MJF is doing a very good job of reigniting a fire of that type of gimmick in modern AEW wrestling. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that because he's the right guy for it. Not everyone is going to be able to be that same type of heel that's on the same level type of thing as Mr. Perfect was, but it's a great guys to follow. And definitely not a bad pick for you at number 1. And for me, number 1, obviously based on what I said earlier, is the Swiss Superman, Cesaro.
Nice.
I just put Cesaro at number 1 over Mr. Perfect for the simple reason of that Vince has almost outright said in an interview that he didn't think Cesaro was a world champion type of competitor. Meanwhile, his in-ring abilities, his popularity with the crowd in so many different times of his career. I mean, he was in 2014, and this to me really solidified it. He was in a tag team with Jack Swagger. Now, I mean, look, Jack, he's good in the ring, but he's got the charisma of my left foot. Cesaro was breaking away from that tag team, competing in the main event of the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view for the
Yes.
World Championship as a tag team guy. His partner competed in the opening match of the show and got beaten in about 10 minutes by Big E Langston in an Intercontinental Championship match. I love Big E, but he wasn't over at the time. He was a big guy who had just turned face, and he was kind of working the middle of nowhere. But Cesaro was main event in the show. Cesaro beat Randy Orton in a match a couple weeks before that. He went to the limit with John Cena a couple weeks before that, you know? And then he goes on, he has probably the best showing in that match out of anybody. And outside of the fact that he was in there with guys like Sheamus, Cena, Orton, Bryan, and Christian, who are world champions already multiple times over, Cesaro was probably the one that came out of the match looking the best. And then he goes on to Mania and wins the inaugural Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and that amazing rehashing of the image of Hogan slamming Andre. You have Cesaro picking up the Big Show and slamming him over the top rope. And then he went on this massive heel run with Paul Heyman as his manager. But Vince, doing Vince things, took away that push for one reason or another, and it didn't really fizzle out. You know, he didn't really give it a chance to have its success. And then he lingers in the mid-card and whatever, and then he eventually gets another big singles run in 2015 because people were seeing, you know, he worked in a tag team with Tyson Kidd again, and again he breaks off on his own when Kidd got hurt, and he was over again, and he was in the world title tournament, and I remember he had a match with Roman Reigns. Another sleeper match was Roman Reigns versus Cesaro in the semifinals of the WWE World Heavyweight Championship tournament. I believe it was in November of 2015, right after Seth had to give up the title. That whole thing was great. And yeah, Cesaro went on and had an absolutely amazing match with Roman where he hurt his shoulder. He came back at the night after WrestleMania to this amazing pop, you know, and worked the mid-card scene. Should have probably won the IC title around then. Failed to win Money in the Bank. Failed to get to that world title scene. And then his tag team with Sheamus. And he was popular again in another tag team where he finally had, you know, sustained success over multiple years, you know, 2.5 years in a team with Sheamus, and now, as we've said, kind of falling off the train. So I just think Cesaro, long story short, I know I rambled on about that, was that I think Cesaro, through all the ups and downs in his career in WWE, if he's going to stay, he needs to be world champion because he has earned it. He's one of those guys who's paid his dues and has earned that opportunity and has earned the right to call himself a world champion at least once, if not more, in his career.
No, definitely, without a doubt. And perfect spot for Cesaro, and definitely agree with all the stuff that you just said about him. You know, you speak very highly of him, and he's definitely a person that you could get behind for a world champion. I mean, look at how long it took Drew to become the WWE champion. Yeah. After Vince said he is the chosen one.
Still took him 13 years. But yeah.
So, I feel like this is something that's going to come Cesaro's way, whether he's on Raw or SmackDown, or, I mean, at this point, I'll even take him to be the one to like dethrone Adam Cole as the.
I think
NXT
that
champion.
would be great. You turn him face and moved him down to NXT, and he would probably have the career renaissance of a lifetime.
Yes.
He could have great matches with everybody down there. Ciampa, Gargano, Cole, Strong,
Finn Balor.
The endless limits are very easy to see when it comes to him doing that. But regardless of what ends up happening with him, I think that it's just a matter of time before he either gets that moment or finally gets fed up and asks for his release. I believe, you know, at the end of the day. And I'm excited to see what comes in his career as we go along. And I think as we conclude here and we wrap things up, you and I had a very similar end to this list. We had very similar things to say about the likes of Umaga, Cody Rhodes, John Morrison, William Regal, Finlay, and Cesaro, and Mr. Perfect. So our lists actually mirroring each other in several ways. But at the end of the day, I think when it comes down to it, being a mid-card star can either go one of two ways. It can either propel you to the main event, like it's done for many a guy who's main evented Mania and been world champion, or it can just be a place you linger and end up falling away from and never seeing higher heights again. So, with that being said, that brings us to the end of another episode of the Fans Talk Pro Wrestling Podcast. I've been Freddy, he's been Angelo, and we thank you again for listening. We always ask, as always, to like the video and share it and subscribe to the page. And always remember to never be afraid
to be a fan.
to be a pro wrestling fan. Angelo, I couldn't have said it any better. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.